And we're going to keep it primarily on speaker view for YouTube, okay? Huh. We're on gallery view right now. You might highlight me rather than speaker view. You know, spotlight. Okay. This is a test. Oh, there we go. That's good. Okay, I'm going to get rid of that. Okay. Change camera. That's it, I think. Oddly enough. Well, I'm just gonna. You still on the computer camera? To go to. There we go. That's the one. Isn't life wonderful and intimate with these things? Hello, everybody. To sit here in this seat always changes me. You probably can't see the shift from the outside, but from the inside, it's really dramatic. I can be somewhat identified with and caught up with the inner craziness. And then I get to sit here and look at you. And I don't see those of you on Zoom, but I know you're there. And it changes my sense of myself. It changes something radical. I've never really tried to articulate it. There's something that I say. I said it to Maggie this morning in the kitchen. I'm really glad we're both still alive. Because it really isn't a given. Just the other night, Friday night, I went to the memorial service for my 35-year longer friend Magdalena Zadikov. There were 200 people or so, more. And who would have thought Maggie would go first? She's younger than me. Not that that has a lot to do with it, does it? So I invite you to take a moment, to the degree that it's comfortable for you, to just look around the room and see each other. Maybe turn around and take a peek. Just look. You don't have to if you don't want to or if it's too uncomfortable. And a little story pops to mind. When you leave the building, it won't impress you as much as it does me, but when you leave today, if you walk down 66th, did you come up 66th? When we bought the building, this end of it looked pretty crappy. And nothing was done to it until I set the place on fire back in January. I put oily rags into a trash can. Spontaneous combustion is a real thing. We had oil-soaked rags from staining the doors downstairs, a pile of them, cotton rags. And I threw them in the trash, and I thought, spontaneous combustion, I've heard about that, but not at 40 degrees Fahrenheit, nah. Well, it simmered overnight, and at 9 a.m., we have video of this from the security camera. At 9 a.m., the flames started, and trash cans have a lot of plastic in them. And also the cedar fence. You'll notice that there's a new cedar fence out there. The flames were high enough that where the roof comes out and then goes out for a little bit like this, it's called a soffit. That was burning. And the fire was headed into the attic when the fire department got here. So the place would have gone had the neighbors not noticed. It was very difficult to find a contractor. Too small a job, really. And anyway, I finally found somebody, and they did it. They did it in 2 days. And I drove up 66 out of my ways, coming this way. The building looks so beautiful from the south. It's all the same color. There's no unpainted boards. It makes quite a difference in the appearance of the building, but that's not the point of this story. I was sitting in my office with a friend, and the friend said, "That's weird. What's the birdhouse?" And I looked out, and there was a sort of large birdhouse with a large hole that they were risking their lives on those ladders. They were up there on that end of the building, putting up a birdhouse. And there were lots of pigeons flying around. And I went outside, and I was a little offended. It's like, what are you doing putting a birdhouse on our building without asking? And we didn't... He spoke much more English than I do Spanish, but we didn't have a lot of common language. And I said, "What are you doing?" And he told me, "Well, it's for the pigeons. They were living in the soffit, so we were closing off their place to live." And I said, "I don't want a birdhouse, and I don't want to encourage pigeons to be pooping on the cars and." And he looked at me, and his face sank into pain. It was like, oh. I mean, it was quite impressive to me. And I said, "Well, do you think," I started taking advice from the workers, do you think we should have a birdhouse? And he said, "I thought this was a place of spirituality, and that we would welcome everyone. We have a birdhouse." The look on his face was so sincerely pained that I was so utterly insensitive. Quite something. So, anybody here for the first time? One. Oh, a lot. Well, welcome. Very brave to sit in the front. What if it's terrible and you have to get out of here? Maybe you're just bold people, you just get up and walk out. Well, I have a wish for those of you that come for the first time. I hope it turns out to have been really worth your while. And my quieter wish is I hope that what happens here will totally transform your lives. What we represent here, what we're bringing, is an ancient lineage, an unbroken lineage of teachings from the Buddha. The Buddha, who was an ordinary human being, who woke up, who discovered that it's possible for human beings while alive to really become much more loving and kind and compassionate, and to suffer less and less. And not only did he manage to open to that himself, but he figured out how to train people to do it. And so his life he taught for 40 some years, and his life was dedicated to that. And so we're the beneficiaries of, it's depending upon how you count generations, it's 120 to 140 generations of teacher to student transmission. Yeah. And this was true for me, and I've heard it from many people for whom, when they walk through these doors, they discover that they find their path. Please raise your hand if you've ever been lost in the woods. Wow. Please raise your hand if you've ever been lost in the woods overnight. That's wild, isn't it? Was anyone lost in the woods overnight and didn't have good gear? Wow. How cold was it?
No, it was very cold. Snow.
Wow. Did you have survival training?
No, we found a cabin.
Oh, well, I was lucky. So this has died. It might have been battery, no? I hate it when it does that. It's this stupid antenna. I don't know why this dies. Oh, can you grab a couple of real batteries? I hate these rechargeables. They just don't work very well. Oh, that's got my heart going. Thank you, Trina. I'll bless the batteries. Oh, money, but me. All right. This. All right. Now. Full battery. 1, 2, 3. Okay. A little arousal from that noise. So for some people, for me, it was certainly true. When I discovered the Dharma, it was 1971, January. To find a path, to find a way of life that actually results in life improving over time, really improving. Not just having more pleasant experiences, but actually suffering less and doing less and less harm, which is the topic of my reflection today in the last hour, is going to be on the precepts and doing less harm. You notice the furnace is just turned off. You are listening, when the furnaces come back on, you are listening to the sound of $12,000 of brand new furnaces. And I have an app on my phone that can change the settings on the furnace from anywhere where there's internet in the world. Now that's power. But to have furnaces that work, this is a big space. Which of course means that there are people working now. I don't know where our gas comes from to Portland, but it's probably not real close by. There were people who went out and found the gas. And there were the people who drilled the holes. But right now there are people who are sitting in stations, pressurizing stations. Maybe as far away as Saskatchewan. And they're all doing that so we can be warm. It's quite remarkable. And someone cooked their breakfast. Someone grew their food. So we're the beneficiaries of about thousands of people just today, just to be warm. Also of a wonderful young 27-year-old man named Matthew, who was the installer of the furnace. I meet young people sometimes and I get so encouraged. It's like, wow, maybe there is a little hope given some of these young people. So let's sit. Let's do what the Buddha recommended. Let's begin with our eyes open. Seeing. Mindfulness of seeing, which is very simple. It just means the seeing is happening. The miracle of vision is seeing is happening. But we can add something to that. We can add the knowing of it. Or we can awaken to the knowing of seeing. Wow. And we could do seeing with something. I'm going to put these up so the people out on Zoom can see them. God, these are gorgeous. Seeing. And then there's the seeing. And then there's perception, which is the way the mind makes sense of things. It's like, oh, flowers. And then it can say, oh, yellow and orange and red. And then there can be liking and disliking. Man, these are something else, aren't they? Oh, it's a little cabbage. Perception. Surprise. Wonder if it's edible. You think it is? That was obvious, wasn't it? Try it. All right. Here he goes. What was that? Were you crying out in pain for the cabbage? Shoot. See, insensitive again. It was a cut cabbage. It's at least not poisonous, I think. All right. Sorry. Perception, seeing, mirth, a little humor. Hello, Allison. Glad to see you. Allison is one of our esteemed board members and a dear friend. So seeing. And now making the intention, the internal intention to let the eyes close, and then let them close while knowing it, and be aware of how seeing, first it kind of gets blurry and then it winks out. Awareness isn't gone, but that sense door, that channel is now paused. And we can tune into another channel, which is the body sensation. And notice that the body touches the chair or the cushion or the floor. Notice that there's life in what we call the hands. This life was there before, but mostly we don't notice it because we're so busy, lost in the bright lights of thoughts and memories and plans, and pleasures and pains. There's life in the hands. There's life in what we would each call my face. It's not something fantastic or extraordinary. I mean, I guess that's not true. It is extraordinary, but we're not looking for something startling. It's just what's startling is that we can be aware of it. The face, the cheeks, the lips. So there's a body that sits here. And these teachings that come from 2,600 years ago are very simple. A person who wishes to reduce suffering in their life, to become more loving and kind, compassionate, finds a quiet place, sits down comfortably upright. There's a colorful line, and abandoning covetousness and grief concerning the world, letting go of the past and future. They place mindfulness before them. And this person begins to attend to the coming and going of the breath. The actual sensations, not some fantasy or image, not some improved breathing, just a body naturally sitting and breathing. As it has done since the moment your mother could no longer breathe for you. And there's a little more colorful language from the Buddha. Just as a turner, a person working at a lathe, knows I am making a short turn, or I am making a long turn. So the meditator knows, this is a shortish breath. This is a long breath. This is breathing in. This is breathing out. One of the strategies to help develop some concentration and mindfulness on breathing is called noting. Breathing in, chest and abdomen rise, rising, rising. Breathing out, chest and abdomen fall, falling, falling. And so there's a string of rising, rising, falling, falling. When awareness awakens in the midst of a wandering mind, wandering, wandering, or awakening, awakening. returning to breathing. When the mental factor of concentration is ripening, strong, awareness may well be able to stay resting, abiding within the sensations of breathing for 5 breaths or 10 breaths or 100 breaths. But most often that's not the case. Certainly early in practice, that's not the case for most people. And so we discover that the mind really has a mind of its own. It wanders off. It wanders off. What an odd thing. And as awareness develops, we discover the quality or the nature of the wandering. Some wandering is what we call the past. Remembering this, remembering that, wishing things had been different. Some wanderings are the future. Worry is a wandering mind with a future tense. What if this happens? What if that happens? How shall I prepare? For the purpose of meditation, the content is really irrelevant. Because we are intent upon living in the present moment. The doorway to the deathless, the doorway to freedom, exists only in the present moment. And so with great kindness and persistence, we come home to in-breathing and out-breathing. Hearing. Hearing. Fortunately, there is no such thing as a distraction in meditation. You might notice, did the conditioned mind have liking or disliking of that phone signal? Was there some judgment in the mind? And whatever there was, notice how gone it is now, unless you persist in it. There's nothing at all substantial to anything that happens in the mind. You might continue with rising, rising, falling, falling. Resting back into the present moment. The quality of mindfulness, the characteristics of the moment are of great importance. We can notice, is this a mind which is easily concentrated? Or is it a mind that wanders a lot? Is it a mind that's colored by wanting, desire, or wanting not, disliking? Is it a mind that has jealousy in it, or fear? Is it a mind that's prone to wandering? Is it a mind that's obsessed with something? Not that any of these are good or bad. They're the weather of the mind. And returning to that metaphor of the path, or even better, perhaps a compass or a GPS device. The mind very, very easily wanders off the path, wanders off into thickets and brush and rivers and canyons and all kinds of places. But then mindfulness reappears. And Perhaps we're using mindfulness of in-breathing and out-breathing as our touch point, our compass heading. So we know what to do. Oh yeah, right. My intention is to be here with this breath now, this one. As mindfulness and curiosity and concentration develop, some great truths begin to appear. First among them, according to the Buddha, is anicca, which literally translates as not permanent. The breath sings the song of impermanence very clearly. It's rising, it's falling, it's gone. This is true for thoughts as well, but they flash through much faster than the breath. A tenth of a second or less, the whole thought stream can happen. We're not trying to stop the thoughts. If you do manage to force them to stop, they'll come back with a rush and a roar. Instead, we are doing something of much greater importance, a much more profound intervention. We're developing intuitive knowing that we are not these thoughts. We're not these body sensations. We're not these worries. We're not these neurotic patterns. We're not these fruits of trauma earlier in our lives. What we are, if we are anything, is that in which they all occur. That which knows of them. And so our meditation becomes one of watching the mysterious arising and passing of phenomena, starting with the breath. This practice, known in the language of its birth, is Satipatthana Vipassana. Sati means mindfulness, heart mindfulness. Patthana means something like staying nearby, staying contained. And Vipassana is a very elegant word, which means perceiving reality as it actually is, perceiving without delusion. And so one central thread is we develop awareness of the human condition and discover everything to be flashing into being and vanishing. including this that we cherish as ourselves. So it's a practice of letting go and letting go and letting go and letting go. And there's another side of the paradox in which there's a mind-blowing truth. Those who study such things say that this universe began 14.2 billion years ago. Think of how short your lifetime is compared to that. It's unimaginably short. And yet, there has never in all those billions of years been a you before. Each one of us is utterly unique and always will be. We come and we are a dance of uniqueness. And so it behooves us to cultivate a loving attitude toward this manifestation of the divine, this manifestation of the universe. One simple way is a great mantra, I love you, with your name at the end. I love you with your name. Or maybe there's some statement you've always wanted to hear. You know, I'm so glad you were born. Or I'll always be here for you. Or I'll protect you. Or you're already okay. Let your intuition provide what it is you really want to hear and know of yourself, and then provide it. We could call this taking refuge in the Buddha, in that within us, which is awake. Sometimes we might ask, with all the difficulties of childhood and the prevalence of insecure attachment, so much trauma in our lives, what can we do? We can take refuge in the part of ourselves that was never damaged, was never injured, is not injurable. The part that is awake has always been awake. I love you with your name at the end. And now mindfully noticing the intention to open the eyes. And then it takes some effort to operationalize that intention. And then notice the miracle of seeing again. Seeing objects. seeing. I made a new friend the other day, Friday morning. He's a Zen teacher, a small community here in town. He's also the person significantly responsible for reclaiming the Willamette Falls. They are raising $150 million in order to get rid of the paper mill and to return the falls to their earlier state. And one of the things that they've done is that there are now 4 members of 4 of the major tribes in our area who live in our area. They are the drivers of the board that is going to reclaim the falls. And one of the reasons that these falls are so important and so sacred is that they're the home of the lamprey. Strange creatures. And Andrew is this fellow's name, and he said something to me I didn't know was true. He said the lamprey were here on the earth before trees. They're old. And the native people have held them in great regard. Sacred. And the falls was, of course, sacred territory. And so it's like building this industrial place on top of that sacredness, which is now going to be revealed, right? For the benefit of everyone who lives around it. So one of the things that I didn't finish that thought. I got a chance to give him a quick tour of the center. And he was pretty impressed. And I was pretty impressed too. I was seeing the place with new eyes. The art in this room some of it is exquisite. I invite you, take a moment before you leave. Look it over. There's tiles over there that come from Seljuk in Turkey. That's the tree of life. To the right of them is a goat skin from just outside Rumi's tomb in Konya. It says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We begin in the name of Allah, whose names are compassion and mercy. That green batik over there with the mindfulness eyes, I purchased from the wall of a shop in January 1971. I saw it and I was like, oh, that's what meditation is. So invite you to enjoy the beauty of this place. And since I talked about the falls, I wanted also to mention we just recently have created a land acknowledgement, PIMC. And I don't like to just read it. I like to think about what it means. We're not the first people to live here. There have been people living on this land for probably 15,000 years. 15,000. Used to be we thought it was 10, but it recently got pushed back to 15, which fits with the Ice Age when it was possible to come across the land bridge. So PIMC honors and recognizes that the place where we gather is ancestral land for many people, including the Clackamas, Cowlitz, the 7 tribes of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde, and the 27 bands of the I can't see, confederated tribes of the Siletz Indians. A lot of people. We respectfully acknowledge all indigenous communities of the past, present, and future. The original human inhabitants of this land were forced to leave for the benefit of colonists and settlers. We acknowledge the systemic policies of genocide, relocation, and assimilation that still impact many indigenous families today. We're grateful for their stewardship of these lands and acknowledge the benefit we continue to receive. We're committed to remain mindful of and make ongoing efforts to recognize their knowledge, creativity, and resilience. And of course, that doesn't include the other great, what word should I use? Horror of slavery, right? And I've struggled with this stuff for quite a long time. I don't claim mastery, but I don't think these reflections are intended, at least they aren't from me, are intended to create guilt. It's not about guilt. It's about compassion, right? Every human being in my IMHO, as we text, every human being is now and always has been doing the best they can, given who we are. My father was a man of few words, but there was a particular moment when he said, "Robert, we do the best we are." And I know I've always done the best I could all my life. Sometimes it was really far from good. Sometimes it was pretty damn selfish. But I didn't know any better. And as soon as I know better, I don't do it. And I think that's true for all of us. So I think these statements like this are about compassion. Compassion, and also making the commitment that I'm not going to do that again, or I won't allow that to happen again. I will keep in mind the fundamental humanity of all persons, no matter what side of what fight they're on. Well, who knew that would come out? The 29th, all right? On the 29th of this month, please come to the Zoom meeting, which you can find a link to on portlandinsight.org. We're having a community meeting. It's the first in 3 years, and it's an important one. There's a lot happening at PIMC. We're evolving into our future. And yeah, I'll say it. Several months ago, you'll remember this, Jim, I wrote a letter to the board. I like being dramatic, as you can probably tell. I wrote a letter to the board, and it started with, "I'm going to die." This kind of gets your attention, doesn't it? Oh, I don't have a terminal diagnosis except birth. I have that, but I am. I'm turning 75 this Christmas. And I think I still have some years, but organizations that don't prepare for the founder's departure suffer mightily. So we're involved in a process of creating a 3 to 5 year transition so that we get the new teachers who are in training and the board stronger and your involvement, so that PIMC persists. And I'm really committed to that, to have this evolve and to get much more involvement from people who are in the community now. because this is your place. It's not mine. It's not the board's. It's a nonprofit, and it's your place. This is your building. And so, if you want to have a voice, we actually can have a real democracy. I guess it's sort of a socialist thing. Oh well, bad word. So come to the meeting on the 29th, please, and let your voice be heard and participate in what's coming. Mr. Dalton, would you like to do a little mindful movement? So what we're going to do now, Jim will invite you to stand and do some movement, and then I'll come back and I'm going to talk about a very crucial topic of the Dharma path, which is the precepts. Where is it? I've lost it. You should just put yourself in this where you can see yourself as best you can. Let me have this for a second. Yes, Sherry, that meeting will only be on Zoom. It will not be an in-person meeting at all. There. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, I can move the camera a bit. Should I?
Are we going to do this together?
No, don't move that. Just turn it up so you can see.
I can move this and then.
I can move this.
All right. Negotiating with the cameras and with IT complexity. So let's get in touch with our feet on the floor. I sound like I have a cold, but it's just the remnants of choking yesterday and coming to a point where I wasn't sure how to negotiate with my lungs. Finally, something came out that needed to come out. So that's a little raspy. Ordinarily, what I do is start with the feet, start with awareness of the feet and how different it is once we've been sitting for a while. We settle into a orientation with the spine sitting in a pelvic girdle. So we'll just move that girdle back and forth because it's been held in one position for a long time. And it needs a little bit of release. So we ended the guided meditation with loving kindness, and for ourselves and for the group of connections that we have in our world, our family, our friends, the people that provide the gas that is burning to keep our center warm. Now let's go back and forth without lifting the heel or the toe. Just see how that girdle moving, the pelvic girdle moving forward and back, changes the perceptions, the sense perceptions on the bottoms of the feet. It's like a massage for all the little muscles and tendons and nerves and ligaments. Go back and forth, and it has one feeling. We go forward and back, and it has a different set of sensations. A cycle is created, just as a cycle of breathing was created all through our meditation period. We came back to that cycle as our grounding. We come back to the cycle of forward, back. We can move this pelvic girdle in a circle. I always struggled with the hula hoop. I never really got it. but I had 4 sisters and they could all do it like forever. They'd be talking about something that's going to happen 3 weeks from now, negotiating the whole thing and never stop. Okay. So we have this amazing body. We have this amazing place that was, inhabited by thousands of people for thousands of years. We have a form that we live in that's much older than our human memory. and getting involved with Tai Chi and Qigong 15 years ago, I realized that I'm moving just like millions, billions of people have been moving across the space that they inhabit. So this movement is not mine. My nervous system learned this from not 120 generations like the Buddhist tradition, the lineage in Buddhism. It goes back millions of years. And that pelvic girdle can move in a cycle that integrates arms and shoulders, hips, knees, feet, all at once. It takes effort to bring labels into all the different sensations, but there are sensations throughout the whole nervous system in a simple cycle, reaching, turning, lifting, setting down, all the things that we humans have been doing for millions of years, or at least hundreds of thousands of years. I don't know. It's not important what the numbers are. But this is not my movement. This is our movement. This is how we learned how to negotiate in gravity and moving towards food and moving away from danger, and all that is in this movement. It's something we discover. It's already known by the intuitive awareness of this body. And we know the difference between moving in balance and symmetry, forward and back, for instance. As soon as we start moving like that and see somebody else doing that, there's a harmony that's established within a group. Suddenly a group effort in what I call healing is developed. And then we switch, balance in the other direction, and the body knows exactly how to do the opposite of what it was just doing. Now my left foot is doing something that my right foot was doing yesterday, yet that other moment. The words kind of get confused. So we have this symmetry where everything's moving together. And then we can have diversification, differentiation. Everything's moving differently relative to the shoulders, the hands, and the arms. And then we come back and we can be symmetrical. And we can do mirror images. And the minute I start doing that, your body recognizes, oh, that's how I do that. There's an intuition in the body. When we're moving together, we create harmony. And that heals the nervous system that's been battered so badly this week with all the ups and downs and ins and outs and disasters on every continent. wars all across the planet, flooding, melting glaciers, all that stuff hammers at our nervous system. And then we get together with the people we trust and the people we love to be with, and we can gather we can create a rhythm and just make one up. And it immediately, it's fun to do the same thing that everybody else is doing, because it's a harmless action. It's got really good karma, and that's healing. How many actions in the day don't have such good results? And how many actions can be done with 45 other people with harmless consequences? That's healing. And I'm going to be here Saturday, God willing, and the creek don't rise. I'll be here for a Qigong workshop where we'll be working with meditation and poetry and movement, and discovering that intuitive togetherness, that intuitive collaboration that I call Qigong, or could be called mindful movement, or but it's healing. And it's an opportunity from 9 to 1 on Saturday. So join me if you can. Thank you very much for joining me today. Yes, sir. Oh, that was good. Yeah.
I discovered yesterday that my purse is breaking. Does anyone know a good leather repair shop in Portland? If you do, let me know after. Perfect. Yeah, nice, thanks. All right. I forgot, and the announcements. Connie, where's Connie? I saw her here. There's Connie. Connie is our esteemed librarian. And we have, it was one of the nice things I showed Andrew, our librarian, his jaw dropped. It was like, whoa, this is really a very complete library. So take the books out. There was something else too. I don't remember. Well. Thank you, Paul, for doing that broadcast piece. I'm going to close this. I don't need it. JD Shoe Repair. Would you note the Francine on the chat? There's just someone who's Francine that said where to get the leather fixed. Great. Crowdsourcing. Yes. December 4. December 4, we're having a potluck. Great. Just after meditation. Something else is happening. Huh? Please bring a list of the ingredients. Yes. The 4th of December. Cool. What's happening on the 3rd? Me? Oh, not, I see. Right. I forgot to announce that. Take a look on the website. There's an incredible picture taken by my friend Jill Pangman on Haynes Pass. Feelings. It's her son, Kalen, skiing up. They're headed up into it's an astounding photograph of high mountains. And it's called A Map for the Journey. And I, over this 51 years of practice and 35 or 40 years of teaching, have created a model. I've synthesized a model, which is, well, profoundly, it's Theravada Buddhist model of awakening, the path, integrated with Carl Jung's depth psychology. And so, for instance, when I am meeting with someone and I'm trying to understand what's going on, right? You know, where are they stuck? What belief, what psycho-emotional pattern do they have that they can't see? And that's it. Or what grieving do they need to do, or in order for them to take another step in their journey? And so I have been developing this model, obviously, as we all do, for all these years. And this will be the first time I'm presenting a workshop trying to make that shareable. So, and it's pretty simple, really. Okay. Thanks for that. It would have been bad if I forgot it. How to do it? I get it here. I just thought of a poem that would be very apt. Can I remember the name of it? I'll look for just a moment. Oh dear. It's bad enough without the glasses being dirty. Oh, I'll just paraphrase it. So far today, God, I've done all right. Haven't lied. Haven't spoken ill of anyone. It goes on a little bit. And then it says, and soon I'm going to get out of bed. And I'm going to need a lot of help. Please join me. Raise your hand if you've ever created a real mess in your life. But there it is. By lying. By taking something that wasn't freely given. Around that bizarre issue of sexuality. Have you ever killed anything that you felt remorse for afterwards? Ever killed any? Probably not any one. Though if we think of all my relations, it's... Have you been on the side trip of intoxication at all in your And if we include the great intoxicant of all, I didn't steal as a child. In fact, I was somewhat hyper pure around that. And then I was in graduate school at York University in Toronto. And York is north of the city, and it's cold and blowy. And there's a whole, like a lot of Canadian cities, there's a whole underground network. I grew up in Montreal, and it's an astounding city for you. You can live in high-rise apartments 10 miles west of town, and you don't even need to wear a coat to go to work, because you go downtown, and there's the shopping areas, everything's underground, because it does get to be 30 below with some frequency. But I was going through the underground tunnels, and I came upon a cart of salads, and I took one, and I ate it, and it felt very exciting. And then I forgot about it. And then several years later, I was practicing in India as a monk, and that stupid salad came up, and it was a problem. I had this sense of remorse and I talked with my teacher. There's a picture of him in the living room, Indian man. And he proposed that I be gentle with myself, and that I realized that anything that damages our uprightness of heart is unsettling. It means we can't quite let down. And several years later, I was passing through Toronto, and I went to the university and paid for my salad. And the manager, I think, thought I was a little nuts, but it was a relief to me that I didn't have to carry this, and it was something I could repay. No one taught me how to end relationships. And I did a couple of them really badly. Long time ago. And I've tried to find one of those women in particular. Never could find her. But I wish I could, because I'd like to say, I was really a jerk. I did my best, but I really wasn't kind to you. And I imagine it hurt you. As our meditation quiets the mind and heart, things will arise. We'll remember things. And we'll remember them because there's that amazing book, The Body Keeps the Score. Somatic experiencing. The body's got all kinds of memories in it. The body mind. So for Buddhist monks, there are 228 major rules, and then a lot of minor rules. And the way they all came about was that as someone made a mess, the Buddha would say, oh, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to do this anymore. I mean, among them was Buddhist monks in India do a 3-month meditation retreat. It's called the Rains Retreat. And it's during the rainy season, what used to be a dependable rainy season. And the reason they did that was that they were walking around and they were killing lots of bugs. And the Jain monks were very offended by that. And also they were tramping in people's fields because you couldn't tell where the fields were and weren't because it was so rainy and wet. So the Buddha made a rule, no traveling around for these 3 months. There's lots of other rules, and there's 5 big ones that are intended not as, they're not commandments like we have in the Judeo-Christian tradition. And they weren't handed down by God. They're the law. And I could use this very nicely. There are laws that we make, right? There's trying to live together. We have laws that unless you're very wealthy, you have to follow. But that's another story. But there are laws about, it's the way nature is. For instance, right now, you are being pulled toward the earth pretty strongly. It's hard, to jump up more than a couple of feet is work. And so there's something happening between objects. And I don't think there is a unified gravitational formula yet. Maybe there is that. But anyway, laws are things that just exist. And so if I have this battery here, it's got some heft, it's got some weight, we would call it weight mass. What will happen if I let go of it? Anybody? You think it'll fall? Should we test? Should we be empirical? Wow, it did it. What about this time? I think so. Let's try one more just to see. In this place, this close to the earth, with these conditions, this will always drop. It's a law. The precepts are laws. And so we start off, we teach them to our children, and perhaps we learn them ourselves. We teach them to our children because we want them to succeed in life, and we take them in ourselves because not only do we want to be happy and succeed in life, but we want to wake up. We want to become Buddhas, perhaps. And there are some things that create so much upsetness in the mind and heart that when you come to meditate, and what you're wanting to do, what we're wanting to do in meditation is relax and relax and relax and relax and relax and relax and relax until we discover that we're everything, right? We're not just this, we're this briefly, and we're this. And we are in relationship with the other. Oh, we're not separate. And it's one thing to reflect on that philosophically, right? Isn't that an interesting theory that we're not separate? But what if it's actually true and experienceable? And we would call that love, right? There's no separation, which means then that your well-being is as important to me as mine, because what I do to you, what happens to you, is actually happening to me. So again, it's one thing to have that philosophically, but the meditation takes us in the direction of that being known. So there are 5 precepts which are presented as rules of training. At first as rules, theoretic theory, sort of, And then as we experiment with them in our lives, we discover whether they're true or not. And then they become, and sometimes we restrain our behavior, or we do certain behaviors because the theory says that if I restrain this behavior, I'll be happier. And then we do it a few times, or a few hundred times, or a few thousand times. And we discover, wow, it seems to always work. Or there is some behavior that is proscribed, don't do this, and we do it anyway, and we get the kick in the butt. It's like, oh, I thought I could get away with that, right? They're not about guilt. They are a little bit about healthy shame. You know, healthy shame is a wonderful thing, because when we do something that violates our moral and ethical code, then we don't feel good. That's very different from toxic shame. So I want to go through them one at a time. We don't have a long time. I'm going to try to keep track of the time a little bit today better. The first one. Panatipata veratmani sikapadam samadhiyami. I undertake the rule of training to refrain from taking the life of any living being. Or there's another way of saying it is, I undertake the training of the heart, which is actually prettier, I think, don't you think? I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from taking the life of any living being. Imagine how different the world would be if we did that, all of us, and just did not killing any human beings. Changed the show a lot. I did something pretty weird recently. I think maybe I shouldn't even say it, but I was drawn to YouTube. Somebody sent me something, and I went to YouTube, and then YouTube offered me a drone picture, a drone video from Ukraine. And there were several Russian soldiers standing, and this drone dropped a little tiny bomb on them, a little tiny thing, weighed less than a kilo. And there was a small puff. It wasn't a big explosion, and they all fell down. It was a fragmentation grenade. They all died right there, or were badly injured. Wow. I mean, that's going on. That really happens. Human beings are hunting other human beings. So, and as I've had the privilege to work with a fair number of veterans, and over the years, they don't feel good about killing people. They feel pretty bad about killing people. And because it's against the law. It's against the Dharma law. Right? So, and then we can extend that to minimize the amount of killing that we do in our lives. I mean, it's I sometimes get tired of those damn spiders that are in the shower. They're in the bath. I'm cold already, and I don't have any choice. I've got to try to save the thing, and then I have to take it outside, which I feel bad about because it's cold outside. But so we try to minimize the amount of killing we do in our lives. And then 20 years ago or so, I wrote these positive statements, which are not common across Buddhism. They exist really only here. I aspire to become kind and of service to all beings. Kindness. The Dalai Lama says, my religion is kindness. kindness. Kindness to this person, kindness to the persons closest to us, kindness to our pets. I had for 17 years a really cool little white dog. His name was Budo. He used to come in here all the time. He came to my classes with me, and he was the one exception. Ruth Dennison did that, so I thought I had the liberty to. But he, a few years ago, I decided that both he and now our dog, Dobby, who's an 11-year-old lab, I decided I would spend 4 or 5 minutes twice or 3 times a day and love them into submission. It was a veterinarian friend of my wife's who suggested this, with the white one who's kind of wild. And the last thing I do before going to bed at night is I tuck Dobby in, basically. She sleeps under the window in our bedroom, and it's cold. And so she has a heater. I turn on her heater, and I pat her until she goes to sleep. And it feels so nice. And as I found with Budo, when he died, and he died in my arms, and I got to bury him the next day, I planted a dogwood tree on top of him. I felt pretty fine with his passing because I know he knew he was loved. I did everything I could to convince him that he was loved in his lifetime. And I don't have any remorse, or I don't even really miss him, because every dog is Budo, I discovered. So I aspire to become kind and of service to all beings. So there are lots of ways to practice kindness. And we can do that, and we'll feel better and better about ourselves in life. Adina dana veratmani sikapadam samadhyami. I undertake the rule of training, or the training of the heart, to refrain from taking that which is not freely given. That's a diabolical statement. The way that it's written, thou shalt not steal is one thing, but what is not freely given? There's an example that comes to mind for me. It seems silly, but it's powerful. The bank that I go to has really fine mints. And I don't eat much sugar. I was diagnosed as diabetic a little while back, but I still eat at least half of one of those mints when I go in there. And they're sitting on the counter, and their purpose is to be given away. I always ask if I can have one. Feels much better. Same with the pens at my doctor's office. They have great pens. And I mean, they're intended. They're intended as giveaways. And just occurred to me, hang on, I'll be right back. I'm going off into the sauna here. Can I find them? Oh dear. I can't find. Oh, yes. No, yes. No. Ah. Oh, here they are. Here they are. Yay. There are here 25 or 30 pens that say Portland Insight Meditation Center, www. Please help yourself if you'd like a PIMC. These are freely given. And they're actually pretty good pens. So do you take more energy from your body than is given? Do you give it enough rest? Do you sometimes take more energy in relationship than the person really wants to give? Do you demand it? And so on. We have a problem on the pardon me, the global level, we are taking much more than is freely given. And it has consequences. I aspire to become generous to all beings. The Buddha said that if you understood the value of generosity, you'd never let a single meal pass unshared. And I really take this one to heart. And I don't say this by way of bragging, or that as I was leaving yesterday, and these guys, they were working, painting. The south end of the building is so pretty. And I gave each of them $20. It's not out of the PIMC budget, but I know what it's like to work. They're working on these ladders at the top of this building. And what a nice sense of connection. Oh, and the painting, the boss guy said, "Oh, you don't have to do that." And I said, "I know that, but I get to if I want to." And last night on my way home, I stopped at a 7-Eleven, and there was this fellow. His speech was very confused. It wasn't anyway. He couldn't speak well, and he had several cans, 6 or 8 cans of something alcoholic. And I asked him, "Do you mind if I pay for this?" He was clearly, not well supported in his life. He said yes. We had a sweet little connection. And then the clerk behind the counter and I had a sweet little connection. And we belong to each other. And there's so many ways we can do that. We can, your partner comes home from work or whatever, and they walk in the door, and you can be conscious, I want to give them a real greeting, right? I want to be generous. Now, of course, this generosity thing has to start with yourself. If it doesn't start with yourself, it'll get really weird and codependent and ick. So we can't be more generous with others than we are with ourselves. Otherwise, the balance gets skewed. I should throw this in. Being generous to your Dharma center is also a great way to feel good about yourself. You can do that in that bowl, you can do it online, and we need it. Kamesu michachara veratmani sikapadam samadhyami. I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from sexual acts which cause harm. Why do we act so crazy around sex? The short answer for me is because mom, nature, really only wants one thing. Let's keep the species going. And when two beings meet each other, there are 3 questions. Do I have to fight this one? Do I eat this one? Or do I mate with this one? And it's potent. And we actually go quite insane. We call it falling in love or falling in lust. And our judgment can go, and throw a little alcohol in there, and we really do go quite insane. And it's like, oh, geez, I'm married again. How did that happen? It's like, and it's the same person. They look different, but they're the same. How do we do that? Well, we do that because it's utterly primitive and normal. So we have these cognitive structures. I undertake the training of the heart to be careful what I do with sexuality, to not harm myself and to not harm others. I aspire to nurture love, relationship, and beauty. Libido, there's this life energy, and to use that to bring love into the world, to actually make love rather than have sex, and to actually create art or create beauty in relationship. So I hope you can feel in this, it isn't saying, oh, this is bad and wrong, right? It's not that at all. It's saying we can use these energies for incredible positive, and we can use them for incredible harmfulness. Musawada viratmani sikapadam samadhyami. I undertake the training of the heart to refrain from false and harmful speech. There's a great little booklet by Sam Harris called Lying, which I highly recommend. You can find it on the web. And you'll never lie again with such freedom. It's like you, as Ruth puts it, Dalink, once you have the Dharma, you can no longer get away with yourself. The quote, little white lies and the things like that, they're once you see what you're doing, it's like, oh, geez, I don't want to do that. So gossip, slander, passing on stories you don't know to be true. Oh, and the colorful one, idle chatter. Chatter that has nothing to do with the well-being of human beings, which means all television, the news. And this, I say this always with trepidation, because I have good friends who are really into sports. And I used to like watching skiing, like the Olympic skiing, until it became, here's this person skiing, and now here we have them at home having dinner with their family. It's like, who gives a rat's ass? I want to see them come over that hill and see if they make it. But that's a different story. But there's this, Jennifer sent me this fascinating cartoon, Jennifer, my wife. There's an older person, was once fit, in a suit, interviewing an athlete. And the caption says, well, we weren't sportsing very well the first half, and then we sportsed better the second half. And you insert the sport. It's always the same conversation. It isn't even a conversation. It's a way to keep you engaged for the next advertising to come in. It's so weird. Meditators get weirder and weirder, by the way. You got to accept that. So, and gossip. Gossip. Whenever we're talking about someone else who isn't there. And here's the reason for the problem with gossip. Let's say Beck and I are together and we're talking smack about Jim. Did you see what he did? I mean, he's over, man, and he always does that, you know? God, it's been years. I've known him for 30 years. He's still the same. What happens the next time I'm with Jim? There's a huge wall, right? Well, you don't even know. But, well, he knows, because the only way I could be intimate with Jim would be to say, you know, the other day, Beck and I were talking and we were speaking really badly of you. And so we can guarantee we won't have any intimate relationships with people if we gossip. And of course, some places, like some offices, and well, sometimes parents would rather gossip about their child than actually face their relationship. And then when the kid leaves home, the relationship's over because they haven't had a real conversation in 20 years. So I aspire to use speech to create happiness, harmony, and understanding. And I like to put a plug in for Marshall Rosenberg and compassionate communication. There are training capacities for how to speak well, training skills, schools, of which the Buddha would approve wholeheartedly. Also from the Buddha, when I'm about to say something, is it true? Is the intent healing or something good? Can I say it kindly? And is this the right moment? And if any of those criteria are not filled, don't say it. And when I speak of this, I always think of this one particular earlier in 10 years or 8 years ago in my relationship with Jennifer. Can you imagine how ridiculous this was? We were having conflict texting. That is insane. It's like conflict through email. It doesn't work. You don't get there's no information. All you get is the words and you can misinterpret. So she sent me this text, which was clearly stupid and wrong and misguided and, So I wrote her a text back, which was clear, direct. And then I stopped and I said, I think I was teaching about wise speech and well, is it true? Well, it's true, certainly. And is this purpose healing? Well, not really. It kind of looks like I want to be right, sort of. And is it kind? Well, no, it's not really kind. And is this the right time? Yeah, it's the right time. So, but I knew it was bad, not skillful. Of course, I sent it. Guess what happened? She disappeared. No response. And then I felt bad. And so this conversation, which was, a significant conversation, suddenly ended. And it took till I went home that night, I was able to apologize and make amends at that, that way. And, but that was one of those times when I knew bad of her, but I learned, right? One thing I learned was don't do conflict on text. But also, if it's the wrong time or if it breaks any of these rules, don't say it. It's hard sometimes. And that's something I'm learning as I'm a grandparent. And I've heard it before, but now I know it to be true. You can recognize grandparents by the deep cuts in their tongues. You know, don't you? You know. Sura Merya Maja Pamata Tanha Veratmani Sikapadam Samadhiyami. I undertake the rule of training to refrain from the use of intoxicants. Now that's a big one. I used to have the abuse of intoxicants, and one of the monks came and said, that's actually not what the precept is. So what's that about? It can also, sometimes it's added, which dull the mind. Because there's the question now, well, does that include psilocybin? Well, it probably depends on how you're using psilocybin. Are you using it to bring love and compassion and reduce PTSD and reduce trauma? Or are you using it to party? And intoxication is such a huge part of our world, right? There's the supermarkets I shop in have a huge region always of wine and other things. And next door, there's the liquor store. Why? Alcohol consumption went up 100% in Oregon during COVID. And legal marijuana consumption went up by 75%. What's going on here? It's because life became even more unbearable during COVID. So the question here, the notion is that about feeling guilty? No. It's about watching what happens when we use our intoxicants. Notice the price. I come from two long lines of alcoholics. All of my all of my mother's siblings, 8 of them, and all of my father's siblings, 6 of them, without exception, they were all alcoholic. Normal. And if I hadn't run into the Dharma, I was lost because I was well down the road. And to this day, I will still have a glass of wine or a drink, sometimes go out for dinner or something. And it's the strangest thing because I always feel crappy the next day. One drink and I'm blurry. The price is high. And it's so powerful in our culture. And this must not go unmentioned. These things are intoxicating, astoundingly intoxicating. And the strange, really tragic thing is we give them to our children, and our children become completely addicted to them. I have an exquisite, amazing 21-year-old stepdaughter who, when she was 13, we had a party for her and 12 friends. They camped out in our living room for a night. It was wild. And I went in around midnight. Every single one of them was on their phone with someone who was not in the room, FaceTiming or something. They were all out. And I made a rule. I was the mean stepdad that I did a lot of driving with my kids and my stepkids. And I had a sign on the window of my car, turn off your phone. And when they got in my car, they had to turn off their phones. No, I don't mean just put it in your pocket. I mean, turn it off. Because I'm not a paid chauffeur. I'm a human being. And you might even talk with me. They grumbled and groaned and so on. But and often they wouldn't. Why? Their sense of identity is tied up in that phone, as is mine often, right? I'm on a fast right now, and I haven't been pure, but it's so much better not to be on my phone a lot, on the news. The election tested me. Like I wanted to find out. So, and then lastly, and I've reached 12 o'clock, I aspire to cultivate mindfulness and wisdom, the opposite of compulsive usage of some substance is being awake. So I encourage you, if this would be helpful, take it home. You have been invited to take this home. And is there one of these which you have trouble with? Make a project. Start paying attention. But not oh, you're so bad, you always do this. Instead, it's like, whoa, here's some new information, and I might benefit from trying this for a week or 2 weeks or something. And the practice, not only the restraint side, but also the generative side. If you have trouble with taking and feeling like you don't have enough, practice giving in little ways. First, practice giving yourself time to practice every day, to do your meditation. Generosity really can begin there. Okay, that's the precepts. And I think I said this, but I want to just underline it. Yeah, I did. When you come to your meditation seat, we want to have less and less flutter in the field. Right? If you had a painful conversation with someone where you didn't do your best, where you weren't on your most skillful speech, when you come to your meditation, you're going to feel it. You'll be upset. Or if you've cheated in some way, if you've done something significantly actually illegal, you're going to be anxious. You know, what if I get audited? Or what if that person tells that person what I said about them? So if you want to have a life, and then particularly a meditative life, where you get to go, I can rest now. The precepts are really a helpful tool. Well, thank you for listening. Hope this is useful. Those of you that are here for the first time, I hope you found it particularly useful. After we do our little closing, we will have coffee and tea and goodies in the living room. And if you've never read the plaque in the living room on the wall, I highly recommend it, because it sings the virtues of Ron Nato and Ann Nato Campbell, who between them gave us $500,000 in order to build the ramp and make the building, do the first half of the seismic upgrade, and put in the beautiful new restrooms in the front. So it's a song of generosity, and also to completely remodel the living room. It was kind of yucky before, and now it's gorgeous. So please let us stand, make a big circle, and some of you come up here on the altar area, please, and the people at home will be able to see us. Will my head show back here now, Paul, if the camera's okay? It's okay. Oh, I think it's okay. It's fine. Young, fit people climbing over the furniture. Impressive. So here we are. Please take a moment to become aware of seeing. Before that, let's become aware of contact, touching. Touching the floor, hands touching. And while I think of it, those of you at home may not have a copy of the precepts. I will put them on my blog. When? By tomorrow. robertbeatty.com on the blog there. Okay. So let's now be aware of touching, hands touching, and give a little squeeze with your left hand, or a little stroke. I know you're there, right? We can transmit so much information with just a tiny little touch. And then to the person on your right, get them back. Think a kind thought about them. Who would have thought a petite person would have that much of a grip? Whoa, jeez. It's amazing. You never know with people. And now, seeing. Take a moment to look around this circle, and you might just chance upon some eyes. And there's a magic, a power in making eye contact, even across the room. Seeing. And I think it's because there's only one consciousness, and when it meets itself, it kind of delights. It's like, oh, wow. Turns out I'm not alone after all. The company's fine. And there's a little song, a little chant. It goes like this. It means, may all beings receive all blessings. Ruth Dennison, my teacher of many, many decades, used to sing this at the end of each meeting. Oh, we can just do it. You can catch in as we go. So may all beings receive all blessings, and then sadhu, which means basically, may it be thus, or it is thus. Bhavatu sabe mangalam. Bhavatu sabe mangalam. Bhavatu sabe
Sabbe Mangalam. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you for coming, dear friends. Thank you for allowing me to perform the role that I do here, which is very nourishing and powerful for me. So now we get to do another experiment. Is this circle permanent or impermanent? We've tried this a lot of times and it's always turned out to be impermanent, but I keep waiting and wondering what's going to happen, which reminds me of a short Nasruddin story, Middle Eastern guru guy. He's sitting with a large basket of chilies and he's eating them and weeping. Just his mouth is burning. He gets another one and his students are watching him do this and they're going, "What are you doing, Roshi?" And he says, I know there's a sweet one in here somewhere. Which is some of our behaviors, right? We keep doing it and doing it. I know it's going to be good next time. But in this case, I wonder, is this circle permanent or impermanent? So let's see. 1, 2, 3. Wow. Once again, the law of anicca is demonstrated. So please come through and have some coffee and tea. The cushions go on the chairs at the side, on the pews.